your greatest achievement during these 9 years at ACEC? What was the biggest project or legislation or work on?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like AGC. I mean, having the most recent funding package passed through the legislature was an accomplishment. Partly, too, is changing with the times. When I came on, things were fiscally pretty tight at ACEC. So changing way that we do things, changing, the number of employees, becoming more efficient, just operational changes, not so much advocacy, but operationally how we work was a big part of what I was focused on. And then COVID hit. And
oh gosh.
and then it was, even more so. And so we are, in the process of, really kind of streamlining everything. And as a result, we've become much more lean and efficient. It's something that I think is a positive change for when I'm not here, whoever that is next, after me. My goal is to be able to hand to them something that is in very solid financial shape, which we are at this time, and to really have a system set up that is as turnkey as we can make it. I mean, I just go, here, it's your baby, take it and run.
Yeah, are these the challenges that you currently face at the Washington chapter, or are there any other challenges that you're working on?
In our fall conference in September, it was all about AI. And AI is bringing a whole set of issues to the profession that and it's coming at a speed that we can't even comprehend at this point. And I just had a conversation with the director of our board of licensing for engineers. And, they're trying to get their hands around how does this look from a licensing standpoint? How do we hold licensees to the appropriate standard of care? And they've also seen instances now where it's probably AI that is being used fraudulently to produce plans. You can get plans very inexpensively. I won't name the source because I don't want anybody to go there. But it comes to you and it's got a stamp on it of a named engineer in Washington, wow, except for it's 100% fraudulent.
Wow.
Yeah. And so just as a small example about where things can go and how they can go badly is really apparent. At the same time, AI has the possibility to be a wonderful tool. And so how is it deployed, and making sure that we stay in front of it is going to be a big challenge. So a lot more conversation. We have many of our larger members have implemented or implementing policies around the use of AI, and to make sure that any usage is known, it's secure, it's not using or being accessible to a broader access, so that they're using it on their own data and it's secure.
Yeah, is it starting to get adopted actually by a lot of firms?
It's probably at this point it is not so much being adopted as tested, and not so much in the traditional number crunching design side as it is in where we've seen it probably so far used most is actually in preparation of proposals. The actual writing, taking information and putting together a first draft, and making things more efficient from a speed standpoint, especially when much of the proposal is not necessarily particular to or to an individual procurement. It is somewhat boilerplate. So it is being used, but like I said, I think very cautiously.
Cautiously. You think it will continue to be so, or it will advance with time?
I think it's bound to advance with time, but my membership, and especially the leadership, is very, very cautious about what does that look like, to make sure, because they're all licensed professional engineers, and so if they're the engineer of record, they've got to make sure that everything under them they have cognizance over, and they're able to, in good faith, say that it was managed and they are aware of what was going on. And
what does ACEC stand on this issue? Do you guys want to promote and advance the use of AI, integrate it further deep into these organizations, or you're concerned and you think that we need more policies and regulations?
We are, I think, looking at it as the members are, which is it's a tool for the members to use. I mean, there's actually also applications for us to use it as an association, again, in that kind of drafting, language kind of role, and content. But from a membership standpoint, we support the members, so we are right there with them, looking at it as a tool, helping to provide forums to share information, to share best practices, to make it as visible as we can possibly make it. And so both our larger members that have the ability to investigate and do this themselves, but also that they have the role to share that with our smaller members that are not in that same economic, don't have that same economic and capital ability to really invest in those kind of things.
Is there any effort to regulate the usage of AI?
Yeah, at this point, I'm not aware of anything, but that doesn't mean it can't come very quickly. It's certainly something you hear talked about, at the federal level, in terms of a lot of different technological things that are talked about, from social platforms, to the like, and how they can be misused. And AI is certainly going to, I think, fall into that kind of domain. And its ability to create fraudulent imagery, to create fraudulent voices, is of great concern. I think it's a great concern, both in terms of our profession and industry, but also from national security issues to how do students use it. I mean, think of yourself as a high school student having access to the technology. I think, how do they police that? How is that policed?
That's a different story altogether. Trust me, I have a high schooler and I know what's going on there. I honestly, sometimes I sit down and contemplate into the future. I don't know if we're going to have the same kind of schools that we have today in 10 years from now, or what their role would be. Because if you're a master's student filing for a thesis today, you could write the most mind-blowing thesis you can imagine using AI.
At least as a first draft, and
you can work your way out from there. Yep,
exactly.
And then universities started recently adopting tools that would verify if that piece of work has been done through an AI or not. But guess what? AI developers have developed counter tools that can stop these tools from verifying if this was an AI effort or a human effort.
Yep.
And the same thing is going to start encroaching into different industries. It doesn't matter how much you try to resist it or stop it. I think we'll come to a point where legislation has to kick in, and you have to control it from a legal standpoint.
I don't disagree. I think that will happen eventually. I just don't think anybody has a real clear concept of where the pluses and minuses are going to be yet. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see some implications like this fraudulent use that's just an absolutely clear, nobody is going to support that. So, and it's fraud. It's a violation, it's a criminal violation in the state of Washington already. And so there are laws against that, but how do you police it? How do you shut it down? How do you not have it pop up somewhere else?
Now, here's the thing. Engineering firms are notorious for not being, high in terms of net margins or in terms of profitability, right? They run on usually thin ice. Most of the profits usually goes to the developers, who are the ultimate controllers of these projects, and they pretty much run the whole ecosystem. If engineering companies are presented with a case where they could cut off their costs, a lot of their costs, and also solve a problem with we're having right now with the, we don't have enough manpower, we don't have enough skill set out there, we have a lack of sufficient skill set to cater for the demand that we have. If that particular gap could be bridged by AI, and you could win on both ways, on both ends, reducing your cost. And
again, it's a tool. How is that tool used? I don't disagree. I think there's going to be great incentives to make use of it, but how it's implemented is really going to be important. And that's where, engineering firms, like other people in business, want to know what are the rules, and they will play within that framework. They will operate, tell me what I can and what I can't do, and then I'll use my, my people, my smarts, my, implementation within that framework to go forth. So it is important to set out what are the kind of the side rails of that sandbox. What's that universe? What is that ability to use AI or any other technology look like? And I think that is where regulatory involvement becomes important, is to set up those boundaries. What's the boundary of its use? When do you fall outside of it? When are good to go?
Do you think it will continue to be controlled on, or will it be controlled on the federal level, nationwide level, or it will come down to different states and every state will decide for itself?
I think it's probably going to be a mix. There's going to be certain elements that are going to be controlled at the federal level, and I think the other are going to be at the state level and or at a client level. I think that certain, like our Department of Transportation potentially could come out with a policy about use of AI. I'm not saying they are doing that at this point. I'm just saying it is there is that possibility as to, or at least if you're using it, to disclose how you're using it. I think all of those things are possibilities down the road as we kind of enter into this, more fully.
The thing is that it's moving fast and adoption rates are increasing. And honestly, what worries me the most is what we do with our people, with the engineers out there who could easily be replaced with an AI application here or there, right?
Yeah, I will challenge that just a little bit, because the one thing that is the commonality here is that it is human judgment that is paramount to making decisions of right and wrong, and what is acceptable and not. That is something that AI is not really suited for. And there are examples of what they call AI hallucinations, where AI actually just fabricates information. There was a recent court case, actually a litigation, an attorney used a more junior person within the law firm to put together a brief or a motion or whatever it was, and filed it with the court. And unfortunately, that junior person used AI to draft it, and every single one of the citations, the courts, the previous case citations, was fraudulent. It was not real. AI made it up. And so there are these examples of, again, you're always going to have humans to human contact. You're going to have humans working with other humans about, so what is the best solution? What is the collaborative way to put this all together? Yes, you might have that tool to provide options, but it's the humans that, and with experience and knowledge, are really, I think, are still going to be always the critical factor. And I think that is something that is going to be very important to continue to talk about, whether it be engineers or doctors or whatever. It is human intellect and human compassion and human, kind of viewpoint that will take the information and say yes or no. And that is critically important to success.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk more about this in probably the coming 2-3 years.
Absolutely.
It's it's very interesting where things are heading to right now. But let's talk a little bit about the economy here and the
Sure.
impact of the turbulence we're having on the AEC industry in particular. So I know for a fact that many of the developers are being hit. I know some friends who work for developers. They're cutting down on costs. They have less projects to work on. Some of them are completely moving out of the business and selling whatever companies they have because they expect this to last for the recession in the real estate to last for the next 3 to 5 years. It's not going to come out of that anytime soon. Are we facing a potential recession in the engineering area, or no? Is it just limited to certain pieces here and there in the industry?
Right now, I think that it is a bit segmented. In Washington State, at least within the public sector, between our Department of Transportation, Sound Transit, the local, transit agency, King County, in terms of water, there is a huge amount of public infrastructure work that is underway and is planned. And so Washington State is looking very good in terms of that future. The private sector, we still have a number of tower cranes that are putting up buildings in Washington right now. Do I see that tailing off? Absolutely. I do. I think commercial real estate is going to be, especially exposed, and COVID and working virtually, I think was part of that. The demands are not as high as they once were. Many engineering firms are using a hybrid work model now for their people, both being in the office part-time and out of the office part-time. So the demands just aren't as high. But the one thing that I kind of curious about, and we'll see but this is a little bit longer term, is the world situation is changing. Our relationship with China is changing. I think we're moving back into a time that was more like what it was when I grew up in the 70s. The world was not as unified. I mean, we've been living in a bit of a golden age, in terms of globalization and free trade and such. It was a perfect no, of course not. And there was always issues. The fracture lines that are occurring right now, I've also, kind of stimulated talk about onshoring or nearshoring and what does that look like and how does that affect economic activity? I was just on a trip recently to Arizona, and you had TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and Intel building two separate plants in the Phoenix area. One, I think, was $12 billion, and the other one was $18 billion for semiconductor manufacturing. I know that Intel is building out in other parts of the country. So the ability to have that come onshore, I think, is going to also maybe our own manufacturing capacity is going to increase. So I'm optimistic. I'm troubled and concerned about things because it really is I think a time of change and in disruption. It's also a time of inflation. The generations are getting smaller. I mean, I am at the tail end of the largest demographic group in the history of the United States, the baby boom. And the generation that's coming in behind to backfill, the people of my age as we retire, is smaller. There's few. So what that means in terms of of growth and recruitment to engineering is one of the most important issues that we have before us, and that I think ultimately. And unfortunately, it's tied up in so many political issues right now, which means that we need to recruit. We need to recruit from across the world to bring the best and brightest to the United States. And I think that is one of the advantages we have is obviously there are many people that want to come to this country still. And that is an untapped resource that largely untapped, that needs to be looked at.